morning, everybody. I'm going to launch right in because we are on the clock and this is a really important, critical discussion. Advocate Batohi and I have mediated in the back and I agreed very begrudgingly, I'm teasing, I agreed to give her 1 minute to start off with, to set the tone. And just to reiterate, this is a critical point in the country. I, as a journalist, feel very shaky being here because for the past week and a bit, longer than a week, every morning, the first message I read on my phone is about a shooting, a fatal shooting somewhere in Cape Town. The last message I read on my phone is about a fatal shooting in Cape Town. So, over to you, Advocate.
No, thank you very much for giving me this minute or so because the rapid fire needs to be contextualized a little bit. So good morning to every one of you. Firstly, I hope that the makeup lady did a better job on me than on Ed Kisvetter. But certainly my last appearance here was in 2020. And it was very soon after I was appointed as a national director. There was a really optimistic mood in the room, and many, including me, thought that nursing our rule of law back to good health was going to be pretty smooth sailing. I think I got a standing ovation on that occasion. I don't expect one today, but I certainly hope that at the end of this, I will be able to give you some hope that the fight is not lost. We live in an age where the rule of law is under siege globally, and South Africa is no exception. The scars of state capture, as you've heard, they still run deep, and the public's demand for justice is urgent and justified and understandable, and we do listen. I do know many of you are frustrated, have lost faith in the NPA. I'm going to rush through this, and you are frustrated, you are angry, justice has not come at the speed and scale that you expected. I will not deny this truth, but don't mistake delay for defeat. Prosecuting complex corruption and organized crime is among the toughest challenges any prosecuting authority, any democracy faces. Millions and millions of documents have to turn into evidence, admissible evidence. Evidence has been destroyed, reluctant and scared witnesses, prosecutors targeted, weaknesses across the criminal justice system slow down things. But yet, despite these headwinds, we've done really good things. The IDAC has been formed, the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, into a permanent structure. We've enrolled lots of major corruption cases, contrary to perhaps popular belief. There have been hundreds of convictions in the public and private sector. We've clawed back billions, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of work of institution building doesn't make headlines.
Sorry, Advocate, I'm going to interrupt you. We mediated
that's
1 minute, 30
fine.
seconds. Apologies, I don't like
I know
interrupting.
it's a quick fire.
But
It's
we
fine.
are doing this rapid fire, and there are critical issues to discuss.
Sure.
So I'm going to jump right in. Do you think the NPA is in crisis at the moment? Yes or no?
No, definitely not.
Okay, so the NPA isn't in a crisis. Do you think policing in South Africa is in a crisis at the moment?
I think the criminal justice system faces many challenges, and I think crisis is strong, but I think perhaps we need to call it like it is. I think there is a crisis in this country.
I do believe there is a policing crisis. I think with the KZN Commissioner, Lieutenant General Makunazi, he has basically highlighted that there is a glaring crisis. Policing results in people being arrested, results in people needing to be prosecuted. I don't think we can separate the two. Therefore, I would argue that the NPA is in crisis. But I do respect what you're saying. There are prosecutions happening. So I'm going to jump right into state capture cases. I know that...
I have to disagree with you. The NPA is not in crisis.
Okay.
I mean, there's challenges, certainly.
But
I think it's a solid
crisis.
institution that we depend on the police. Yes, we do, for good investigation. So I think we have a crisis of organized crime, etc., in the country.
Absolutely.
But certainly the NPA is not in crisis.
Which I'm going to change my question then to the next one. Do you feel that there has been sabotage within the NPA to avoid certain prosecutions?
There definitely has been.
Okay.
We've come through a period of state capture. And that's why I welcome the Madlanga Commission, because I think if things like that are still going on, we need to root out the bad apples in our institutions, and we need to make sure that we, after a fair process, kick them out.
Absolutely, which brings me to the Madlanga Commission, which isn't starting next week, Monday, as we anticipated. If you've read the news, you know that is because of issues relating to infrastructure. So that commission is going to analyze the allegations/accusations made by Lieutenant General Makunazi. One of many accusations he made is that there is a criminal drug cartel, basically based in Gauteng, which is controlling a criminal syndicate, and part of that syndicate includes state officials, including prosecutors. Now, is that not a crisis when we've got a police officer saying there's a criminal syndicate? And I'm not just saying a crisis NPA specific. Is this not a broad crisis in which the NPA is included prosecuted. Therefore, in effect, it is part of a crisis.
I think
it is in crisis.
we can actually conclude that once the investigation is done. At the moment, they're allegations. And, we need to ensure that they are properly aired and we know what's going on and we deal with it. But there's certainly, I wouldn't say there's a crisis at this point, but there's a lot that needs to be done to ensure that we identify those that could be potentially compromised.
So I'm going to refer to a 31 July presidency statement, that's this year. The State Capture Commission, this is in reference to that. The integrated task force led by the MPA is actively implementing 218 criminal investigation recommendations. As of March 2025, 5% of the cases were finalized. That's about 10, 11 of the 218 investigations that we're talking about here. Are we winning the fight against, I'm going to say, past state capture? Because I do believe we may be in another iteration of state capture. Are we winning that fight?
To win this fight takes a lot of effort. And this is not a fight that can be won in the short term. It requires, we must understand that the decimation of institutions during the state capture era had very, very, the impact on state institutions. And to rebuild that capacity is not an overnight thing. It's a journey. The IDAC was formed just a year ago. And so there's capacitation. The NPA, we've improved our capacity and this is, Ed was talking about institution building. In order to deal with these cases, you need strong institutions. That is the drudgery of back office work that doesn't make the headlines. But we've actually set up a really strong institution to do exactly that, to make sure there's quick cases. We've got a 25% increase in our capacity. We're enhancing specialized skills. The asset forfeiture unit has been seriously strengthened. And so, yes, this hasn't been as quick as we'd like to. We've set up a digital evidence unit together with a partnership with business that we think is going to be a game changer in terms of analyzing evidence that are on devices, etc. So yes, it has been slow, but all of this building process is certainly the fruits of this is going to be seen as we get the capacities and capabilities to move much quicker.
So I'm just going to throw out two sayings, which I'm sure some people would argue justice delayed is justice denied, not necessarily to the person being prosecuted, but to the people affected by the crimes of that person who isn't being prosecuted because of delays, right? And also, I'm not going to go into much, but the National Postponement Authority, some people call it that because of postponements, not that.
We don't postpone cases, the court does.
So, yeah. So
it's the magistrates that decide on postponements. We object to most of them.
We're going back to the Madlanga Commission. This is another commission of inquiry, right? This commission will likely produce cases that get investigated. This will likely lead to prosecutions. Does the MPA have capacity for yet another commission of inquiry if we still haven't seen the fruits of the State Capture Commission? Can you deal with another?
I'm going to deal with that in a minute, but on the postponements, I do want to say this. It frustrates us as a prosecuting authority that these cases take forever. You heard Advocate Rabaji talk about years. I mean, we have Billy Downer, one of the best prosecutors in the country, that has been trying for almost 20 years to get a case to start. That shows that it is extremely difficult, not because of what we are doing or not doing. It's because of systemic issues that frustrate us as much as everyone else. And unless, I've said this, unless the judiciary really becomes stronger in terms of how we avoid these postponements, then it's going to be very difficult to rebuild the rule of law.
Yeah.
So your question on Madlanga was?
I can't even remember at this point, but basically, do you have capacity to deal with it? Do you have capacity to deal with yet another commission of inquiry?
We are prepared for it. We are preparing. At the moment, it's allegations, so we're not quite sure what exactly is going to come out in the commission. So we have to wait to understand the allegations, but of course, we're preparing ourselves to deal with whatever comes out.
So I'm going to switch over to extraditions. We know there's an issue with extraditions at the moment where it was ruled that the NPA can't actually effect an extradition. That's up to the Justice Minister. Where are we at with that? I know this case is being heard, or this issue is being heard in the Con Court, but in effect, what I've read, and I want to hear from you, this could impact 89 active or pending extraditions, which means that's 89 suspects.
This is another case, the Schultz matter, where the NPA is unfairly judged whilst a justice process is still ongoing. The Schultz matter, and we had the Chulota decision in the asbestos case, have been devastating for the rule of law. How can you have a court rule that the NPA is not the one to actually submit extradition applications, it must be the magistrate, but that this has retrospective effect? so that all of the extraditions we've submitted, and it's more than 89, now are in jeopardy. It cannot be. So we are now, that matter is before the Constitutional Court. We are appealing it. I know that the Constitutional Court judges are, it appears that they are taking it seriously. We have their dates in September by which we have to submit various documents, etc. We're certainly hoping that we'll get a decision of the Constitutional Court so that the asbestos matter, when it starts in January, we'll have all the accused back in court.
So I'm going to try and squeeze in 3 or 4 more questions, but let's see. So let's start with Timothy.
If you keep them short, then give me
Timothy
the time. It'll be great.
Let's go. Timothy Omotoso, sorry, pastor, televangelist, accused of rape and sexual assault after 8 or 9, I think it's 8 years, he was acquitted this year. So that's effectively your entire time in the NPA. How did that make you feel?
Devastated. Devastated, impact on our fight against sexual and gender-based violence in this country. And let me tell you that those 8 years was not occasioned because the prosecution was not ready. It was occasioned by Stalingrad tactics that the defense are very good at. And there are various reasons, you know, the judges had to change, et cetera, et cetera. So that has been devastating, but we've learned valuable lessons from that. And, you know, the various changes that we're making in terms of how we deal with better support to victims, et cetera. But I do want to say that we should not judge our ability to deal with sexual and gender-based violence on one case, one very important case. But our conviction rate on SGBV has gone from about 50, 60 to now standing between 75 and 80%. The Tutuzela care centers are an international best practice where other countries are learning from what we do. Victim-centered approach. So there's prosecutors across the country are doing incredibly, the Jocelyn Smith matter in Cape Town, really, really good work. But this one case has certainly been a setback, but it should not detract from really all of the good work that's happening by prosecutors every day in this country.
I want to dial back quickly. Sorry, please applaud. Absolutely. And prosecutors are doing good work. We do know that. We can't only focus on the negative. It's an incredibly dangerous job. We have had 2 prosecutors murdered in the Eastern Cape. I remember a 2022 judgment from the Western Cape High Court. The judge in a gang case warned that prosecutors and their families are at risk. So there are people who are literally dying to uphold the rule of law. And that's why my next question is, when you said, yes, there is sabotage within the NPA, is that from within the state? Are those people, do you believe they are embedded there to prevent or thwart certain prosecutions?
No, the prosecutors that have been killed, I mean, you know, there's been arrest in Tracy's murder. It's devastating. I mean, the killing of one prosecutor, do we understand what kind of shockwaves it sends through prosecutors in this country? We are meant to prosecute without fear, favor, or prejudice. Can we prosecute without fear anymore? It is a dangerous environment that we're working on. But, you know, when I visited Tracy's family, and I had one young prosecutor, a woman standing there, and she said, ma'am, we are soldiers. When one falls, we have to keep fighting. And that inspired me. But it is a very, very complicated environment that we're working in. And I really want to commend we are doing everything now. I've spoken to the minister to increase our budget to make sure that prosecutors are safe. It's not just them, it's their families.
Absolutely.
And children.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, she was killed in full view of her 8-year-old daughter. It's just unacceptable.
It is. It is unacceptable, and it's almost horrific that when we've got 270 murders at the top 30 murder stations in the Western Cape over 1 month, this is where people being arrested, they're being pushed through this system.
And when one thinks about complex corruption matters, etc., you think witnesses are afraid.
Absolutely.
Why would you put your life and your family's life on the line to testify about a state capture case, for example? Yeah. Speaking before the Zondo Commission is very different to testifying and being cross-examined in a court of law.
So I just want to tail back, though. If you can, yes or no, is there sabotage within the NPA from within the state? Because that's what I would call state capture.
Look, I have information, I've said this publicly, that there are prosecutors that may not be committed to the rule of law in this country. And that is why I'm very, very pleased that the Madlanga Commission will hopefully root out any such prosecutors, because there's absolutely no room for compromised prosecutors. We are meant to prosecute people without favor for, you know, we can't ourselves be compromised or complicit with organized criminals, for example.
So the Gauteng NPA director, as you may well know by now, Andrew Shockley, was placed on suspension, but that was 2 years after Advocate Batohi requested that. But moving quickly along, because we don't have more time, but I do want to ask
I have a lot more time. I'm happy to stay here. I got a lot more to say.
We can take it outside. I'm teasing, not like that. But yes, the Guptas, will we see them in South Africa? Do you believe that the wanted Gupta brothers will be in South Africa to face the music relating to state capture, which has directly impacted us?
It's not going to be easy. We are currently putting together a new extradition application with more charges than we did the first time around. It's not going to be easy, but I do believe that with all our efforts, we will see them back in South Africa.
Okay. And you are retiring, or you are up for retirement. Any words of advice to your successor? Succinct words of advice, given the time.
When politics and law collide, law seldom wins. I would say, forget the noise. Be very, very focused on what we need to do to rebuild this country. We've set a very good, solid foundation. Take it forward. You have really good prosecutors in the NPA and other support staff who do incredibly important work. And so I'd say to him, really, the most important thing is forget the noise and the narratives and stay focused on what we need to do.
Of course. And I'm going to be so cheeky, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but this is something I actually wanted to ask you, and I really want to know. So Amabongane did a documentary. It's on their YouTube channel. Please go look at it. Tell no lies, claim no easy victories. And in that, there was, I don't want to say evidence to suggest, I'm not a lawyer, but there were suggestions that the head of IDAC, Andrea Johnson, had basically given a directive or instruction that people carry those boxes containing files, but they were empty, so kind of act the part, but you aren't necessarily being the part at that point. So, yeah.
You know, I haven't watched that. I haven't watched that documentary.
I know that Susan Comrie, the journalist, did put it to you that she's got the video. So
all I want to say is that when journalists want to push certain narratives, the way they do it sometimes actually doesn't help our fight to restore the rule of law in this country. And I think we need responsible media reporting. Advocate Johnson is one of the people of the highest standards of integrity. She may have been trying to, sort of motivate her people. We're going to court on one of the biggest state capture matters. And that New Lane matter, let me just remind everyone, that we were crucified for as, the prosecution, a comedy of errors, etc., etc. And Amabongane used that case probably as a linchpin to lynch the national director and the NPA. That case has been overturned on appeal, right? And the judge in that matter, an acting judge, was actually really seriously castigated, is perhaps the wrong word, but the Supreme Court of Appeal made it very clear that the judge got it seriously wrong and the prosecutors didn't. We raised 9 points of law in that matter, successful on 7. And so I think I really urge, we want to be held accountable. Absolutely. We want to do the right thing. But when you do it, please be responsible, because we are in this fight together. And it doesn't help when we push narratives that do not help in strengthening the rule of law in this country.
Absolutely. I fully agree. And as a journalist, as a reporter, I want to point out that we do report on what is happening. We report on reality. The reality at the moment is that there is a police crisis. The reality at the moment is that there are shootings. Organized crime is out of control. The reality is that there are setbacks, as you say, and I would say there are problems. And I just want to point out...
They're huge challenges. Problems is putting it mildly.
No, they are. I mean, it's very easy to sit here and succinctly go through a few words, but people's lives are directly impacted. People's lives are in danger. People are putting themselves in the front of bullets.
It's easy to stand on the star. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
it's easy to stand on the sidelines and to shout. No, but jump into the ring and get your hands dirty. And if you've never worked in government, you will have no idea of how difficult it is. But I'm happy to talk to all of you later, because I have a lot more to say.
Thank you. If you've worked as a journalist, you'll also know that it's actually very dangerous, especially when you're exposing issues that go on to be prosecuted. It's also very scary.
Don't give up on the NPA. We're going to fight. We are here to fight the good fight. You have incredibly good people working. The question you should be asked is, when you have good people trying to do the best, why is it so hard? Let's understand, ask the right questions, and then let's find the solutions. If we don't properly frame the problem, you can kick out the national director, but you're not going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Because the next national director will have the same problems. So let's ask the right questions and get the right solutions.
There we go. And we're in this together, people. We're not here to fight. And we hope, we really
We are here
hope
to fight the good fight, for sure.
Exactly. We're going to fight the very good fight. And we're going to fight the people, not fight, but we're going to take on the people that are putting us here and having these discussions, which we shouldn't be wasting time on, right? So thank you very much,
Thank you.
advocates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.